Well, hey everyone, welcome to the stream. Glad that we already have some pizza and food conversations going on the side here. And yeah, just overall, welcome to the show. My name is Taz Miller. I'm a partner solutions architect here at AWS. Super excited to be joined here by Brett from Curious Orbit and my coworker, Chloe Goldstein. Chloe, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Chloe Goldstein. I'm a partner solutions architect at AWS. Howdy Partner is a show where we showcase our partners. And today I'm really excited to have Brett from Curious Orbit on the show. There he is. I started working with Brett when I joined AWS almost 2 years ago. I was working in product marketing and I was actively engaging with the AWS community as a way to market some of our management and governance services. And in my product marketing role, AWS and the cloud were really new to me, and it was definitely a lot to learn. And I'm bringing that up because I want to emphasize that I definitely have a non-traditional tech background as a solutions architect, but there are so many ways to grow technical skills and to become hands-on with AWS. So really anyone should feel like it's something that they can learn about regardless of your background. For me, actually getting to work with Brett and Curious Orbit helped me a lot to learn about AWS with the content that he and his team were creating, especially about CloudFormation, because by understanding CloudFormation and how to automatically provision multiple AWS resources, you learn so much about AWS. So to get started, I just want to give a pretty high level overview of CloudFormation, and then I'm going to turn it over to Brett, who will tell us more and give an incredible demo. So CloudFormation provides a way to model a collection of AWS resources, provision them, and then manage them throughout their life cycles by using infrastructure as code. And you'll learn more about that soon. Typically with a cloud application, there are many components, whether that's networking, compute, databases, users, roles, and more. These servers and resources are the infrastructure components of your application. And CloudFormation is really powerful because it lets you create a template to describe your resources, their dependencies, and then you can launch and configure them together as a stack. So with this stack, this collection of resources can be managed as a single unit, which is really useful. So there's really a lot you can do with CloudFormation. It's a very powerful service, and I will now let Brett tell you more.
Great, thanks, Chloe. I can't believe it's been 2 years already. That's amazing.
Time flies, right?
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like 2 years. So thanks for the intro. Let's talk a little bit about CloudFormation. I have a few slides to go through. We're going to kind of jump between slides and a little bit of a demo, as Chloe said. And we really want to just talk a little bit about something that we've built over the last probably 6-8 months. We call it Orbit Ops. And it's really just a collection of CloudFormation templates. So before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about kind of how we think about infrastructure as code. And you know, I know right away when you see this, you're probably like, what the heck is, why do we have macarons on the screen? What's that have to do with infrastructure as code? Well, first off,
honestly though, when you sent that over, I saw the first slide and I was like, I'm in. This works.
Yeah, I had somebody else say that to me too. They're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go and find out what the heck you're talking about.
They're delicious.
They are. But when, you know, I a lot of times, you know, I'm a very visual learner. It's the way I've always taught myself. I look at pictures, right? And I take those pictures and just basically reverse engineer them. So when I think about this picture and I think about infrastructure as code, I kind of think about it as a recipe, right? And that's where the macarons came from. I'll tell some more stories about macarons as we go through the rest of the presentation, but that's really where it came from. So when you think about making anything, macarons or something else, you've got a list of ingredients, right? And those ingredients are combined in a certain way to create an end product. So when you think about a macaron, you've got eggs, you've got almond flour, you've got a bunch of other things, and you combine them in specific measurements to make a macaron. So I think about it like this. We have a solution we want to build. And to Chloe's point, that solution has things like databases. It has load balancers, it has compute, maybe it's got serverless components. Those are all the ingredients that make up our solution, right? We combine those together by describing them in a recipe, right? We know now how much of each of those components we need, and then we run them through the CloudFormation engine to turn them into that solution. Same idea with making a macaron, right? You read the recipe, you understand what you need, you combine those ingredients together, and hopefully you end up with a macaron. I think actually making macarons is probably way harder than what we're actually going to talk about today. So that's really kind of how I came up with this analogy, and we use it all the time when we're talking about basically building out these templates. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. For someone who has tried and failed, I can confirm that they can be difficult to do. And honestly, that can be the way it is sometimes with your cloud infrastructure as well, right? Like you may have an idea, you may know all the ingredients, but like actually building it can be a difficult process. Yeah,
assembling them in the right order, in the right measurements, to continue to use that same analogy. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think, we'll talk a little bit more about OrbitOps, but I think that's really one of the biggest benefits of OrbitOps is we start talking about that. We've done the measuring for you, right? We've sat and we've done that, what I'll call heavy lifting, to borrow a phrase from Amazon. We've worked through why the template won't work. How come it worked last time but not this time? And really the benefit, I think, of OrbitOps is the fact that we've done that work for you. Now you can just take those and assemble them in different ways. The other analogy that I love with CloudFormation is it's like a bucket of Lego, for lack of a better word, right? I've just got all these building blocks and I can piece them together in all sorts of different ways. The way that I combine them for my solution could be significantly different than the way somebody else might combine them. Okay, so yeah, it's a really interesting way to think about this. The other thing I think that when we were first starting to build out CloudFormation, and I've been building CloudFormation templates for a really long time, and one of the things that early mistakes that we made was we didn't really understand how flexible CloudFormation really is. So we would do things, we would hard code parameter values, we would hard code region information, we would hard code account ID information. And this is just a learning process, right? And as you're kind of in that journey of learning, kind of what Chloe said at the beginning, you're going to make mistakes. That's the way that you learn. So one of the most important concepts of CloudFormation is that whatever you do, you have to build flexible templates, right? So we've got 2 stacks of macarons here. They're slightly different, right? And when I think about flexible templates, I want a template that can run across multiple AWS accounts, potentially across multiple AWS regions. And in order to do that, you kind of have to understand how you can logically construct that template. We can talk about things like pseudo parameters and intrinsic functions. Kind of I think the real power behind CloudFormation is that you're able to add macarons to your pizza. I'd hate to say it, but I would probably try that at least once, just to say that I have.
Why not?
Why not? Right? What could go wrong? What could go wrong? I think it's funny that we're talking about adding macarons to pizza, but people will lose their minds if you talk about adding pineapple to pizza, right? Like that's like a PC versus Mac sort of debate. You either love that or you hate it.
And I hate it.
I hate it.
I'm going to draw the line here. Pineapple, no good on pizza.
Okay.
It's also not fresh pineapple. It's kind of gross pineapple normally.
See what's happened? As soon as you bring up the pizza on pineapple, the debate starts immediately. Or pizza on pineapple, the other way around. Pineapple on pizza, the debate starts immediately.
Do you want to know the funny thing is I know for a fact that this is not the first time pineapple on pizza has been discussed on an episode of Howdy Partner.
Yeah. Okay. So here's another little tangent. I'm a really big baseball fan, and I'm a baseball fan because I'm a numbers fan. So for me, baseball is about stats, right? Like you can tell a lot about a player, how they play the game by looking at their stats. So in addition to spending a lot of time thinking about CloudFormation and AWS in general, we also play Stratomatic baseball quite a lot. And if you're not familiar, it's basically like D&D, but for baseball. So you sit around, you have cards, and you roll dice and you look at the dice, and that tells you if you're going to strike out, if you're going to hit a double, if you're going to hit a home run, whatever. And so we're talking about pizza. I keep saying pizza on pineapple on pizza. We order a pizza one day, and one of the guys orders double green pepper. Okay. I usually draw the line on green pepper, and then double pineapple. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be the worst pizza ever. That again would be like macarons on pizza. You got to try it once just to see. You might be surprised. Good pizza. So anyways, flexible templates. You want your templates. Don't hard code things in your templates, right? Because what happens is, you think you have the best laid plan, and you say, we're only ever going to deploy in region A. We're only ever going to use a single AWS account, and then things change, right? That's the beauty of this platform, is that it's really super flexible. So somebody comes and says, hey, this worked great. We've got a new account. Can you deploy that template? And you say, sure. And you try to deploy it, and it doesn't work because you've hard coded an account ID or something like that. So you want to work really hard to remove any hard coding in the templates. And I'm going to show you how we've worked through that with the OrbitOps solution here in a minute. Okay, so that's another big takeaway.
It's also a security point too, right? With the hard coding, you don't want to have any credentials in there that could be potentially compromised.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but one of the things that we would always say is, well, we talked about databases already, right? So quite often we will take a database configuration and turn it into a template for a customer, right? A CloudFormation template. And one of the components, or a couple things that you have to pass in when you're using RDS, is you need the admin username and the admin password. You could absolutely hard code that in a template. You shouldn't, but in theory you could. And then that template ends up in a repo somewhere, a mistake is made, and then the admin password is somewhere else. So Chloe, to your point, I mentioned pseudo parameters and intrinsic functions. One of the things that I would always say is, wherever possible, put that kind of, let's just say, confidential information or high value information somewhere rather than a template. We often use the systems manager parameter store solution. We put all of those things in there, and then you can use built-in functions in your CloudFormations templates to say, okay, well, the admin password for this RDS database is this key value pair in SMS, and go grab that. So always kind of work like that. That's a really good point, is don't put anything in your template that you wouldn't want somebody else to see, right? So I think a good way to think about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The other thing that you would want to do is make sure that your templates are reusable. So flexible, I tend to think about multi-account, multi-region. Reusable would be deploying the same template with slightly different configurations across your different environments. So you don't want to have to build a template for dev, and then a different template for production, and a different template for, insert the environment that you want. It becomes just challenging to manage. And one of the reasons that I think CloudFormation infrastructure as code in general is really important is that, as a human, I make mistakes. I get distracted. My colleagues are asking me for things. So you're kind of multitasking, which we all know really isn't necessarily the best strategy most times. And you make mistakes. So what you're able to do now is just remove a human from that equation. Once you've built that template, then that template should be able to move across different environments, production versus development versus test. And it's going to look the same across all those environments. But what's great about this is you can use something called a condition. And a condition is really just an if statement. So what we would generally do is say, okay, if the environment is production, I want this to be, I don't know, I'll make it up, a T4 large. If you deploy it in, let's say, development, let's make it a T4 small. We don't need as much horsepower there. So it's production-like, but you're removing some of the cost of that environment, and you can use that in the same template. Okay, so this is really kind of the main points that we always consider when we're building out our templates. Make them reusable, make them flexible, and be able to deploy them pretty much in any situation. Okay?
Sure. Some days you want raspberry, some days you want pistachio.
Yeah,
right?
You got it. You got it. That's exactly it. So Chloe, I put this slide here, and I'm not sure if you remember this. This is one of the first things, presentations that you got us involved in. We did a presentation probably longer than I remember or perceive with the AWS community builders, right?
Yeah, that was in the summer.
Was it in the summer?
I totally remember.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, you know what? Again, time has lost all meaning at this point. So it was it was in the past.
I have no idea.
Yeah. And it's funny, like the theme of that was really just how do you build faster using CloudFormation? And one of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to see just how much CloudFormation we had created. So we started Curious Orbit about 4 years ago. And I didn't look at the new numbers for this slide. I just kind of grabbed the slide that we had used before. And when we did that presentation in the past, we had written over 100,000 lines of CloudFormation code for a number of customers across more than 70 accounts across pretty much, let's just call it commercial regions. So North America, South America, Europe for the most part. So a fair amount of CloudFormation that we had built out over the last 4 years. And we went away from that presentation and we talked to a few other people about this. And I really wish that I had like kind of this, you know, you always hear these great entrepreneurial stories about how you just, you know, hit by a lightning bolt and you came up with this great idea. We were actually talking to a few people and they said to us, you realize what you have here is a product. You've built out this growing repository of CloudFormation templates that will help people build faster on the platform. And you know, I'd love to say that I was just sitting around one day and this kind of hit me, but it really didn't. It took somebody not as close to what we had created to realize what we had actually created. So Orbit Ops is really nothing more than a collection of CloudFormation templates. Oops. Okay, there we go. It's really just nothing more than a collection of CloudFormation templates. That's what it is. Okay. And what we do is we sell it as a SaaS offering. So we need a 12-month subscription. It's paid monthly. And then you get access to this giant growing repository of CloudFormation templates that we've built. And, you know, often what people say is, okay, well, tell us about your customers. And for lots of reasons, we can't really talk about the customers that are here. But I will say that we're customers of Orbit Ops as well. Like when we're building solutions that we're creating for our own products and service offerings, we use these same templates. If we're building out something, I just had a customer the other day that came to us, and we're going to talk about this a little later, and said, I need budgets set up across multiple dozens of accounts, right? Because they had a little bit of a cost issue in one of the accounts. And, you know, budgets is kind of one of those things that it's really easy to set up, but people overlook it. And they had just had a little bit of an issue that didn't sit well with the folks that paid the bills. They used the same templates that we would use that are part of Orbit Ops to deploy into their environment and hit all of their accounts and build it out. Okay. So it's really just it's a subscription-based service to a repository of a repository of templates. And then we have a basic community support version of the offering that gives you access to a private Slack channel. And then we have a paid support offering where we get guaranteed response time. So if you take a template, we're going to look at a bunch of templates here in a minute, and you push out that template in your account and it throws an error at you, then you have access to the folks that built the templates to go and say, okay, yeah, this is how you fix that. We've seen it before. Here's how you fix it. Okay. Putting macro, I'm looking out over here at some of the comments as we go. Putting macarons in orbit. Yeah, I think that's good. And then what is a CloudFormation template? Actually, I'll show you here in a second a couple of CloudFormation templates. Yeah, we're going to look at it. We'll probably
see one or two today.
But basically, it's a text file, right? It's a JSON or YAML document that describes what it is that you want CloudFormation to create for you. That's essentially all it is. It's nothing crazy fancy. Okay, that's all it is.
Do you have a preference between JSON or YAML?
We're going back to the pineapple and pizza debate here, right? Okay, so who's a Silicon Valley fan? Anybody? Somebody, yeah, me too. Okay, so we got two at least. So
are we talking about the actual place or the show?
No, I'm talking about the show. I'm talking about the show. I've never been to the actual place, so I can't say if I'm a fan of it or not, but the show is fun, right?
Yeah.
And there is an episode where they get into a pretty animated debate. Taz, you might know this, and maybe a couple other people might know this in the channel, about tabs versus spaces. Without giving it away, in case anybody wants to watch it, a relationship ends on the tabs versus spaces debate. I'm not a big fan of all the curly braces in JSON, just my personal preference. So we write YAML. Okay. Doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with JSON. Doesn't mean that JSON isn't as good as YAML. Pick your poison, okay? Pick your poison, I guess would be the way that I would approach it.
Right.
Sit on the fence.
We've got in chat, I propose single-spaced tabs.
There you go. I like it. That's fantastic. And yeah, we pretty much are all YAML programmers at this point, right? But yeah, the one thing that I would say about JSON versus YAML, pick one.
Yeah.
Right. Like just standardize on something. You're going to have a few people on the team that are probably a little grumpy and will debate endlessly that the selection that you made isn't the appropriate one. But let's just commit to it and let's just go. Right. I have seen situations where customers have a mix of the templates, and I don't know if that's necessarily a whole lot of fun. I wouldn't do that. Right. Yeah. So pick your poison. Yeah. Pick your poison. All right. So that's a little bit about CloudFormation, a little bit about OrbitOps. And I thought we'd have some fun now.
Ooh.
And we'll do a choose your own adventure. Taz again, right? I didn't come up with this idea. I'd love to say this was my idea, but you kind of put this in my brain when we were talking about doing this show, and you said, yeah, it'd be cool if we could kind of do a choose your own adventure. So I grew up reading those books. And as soon as you said that, I'm like, okay, that's what we're going to do. So here we go. And hopefully the demo gods are smiling on us when we do this. So we'll
fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens. All right. So here's our choose your own adventure. All right. And I am going to read slides just for fun because I had a lot of fun building these slides and I want to read them. Okay. So here you go. We're going to start waking up in a shapeless void, otherwise known as a brand new AWS account. We have three options. What do we want to do first? And we'll let everybody kind of decide how we're going to do this. We're going to step through the door that's right in front of us. We're going to walk through the open door that's on our left, or we've got a door on our right with multiple latches on it. Where do we want to go? 1, 2, or 3? Let's see what chat says.
Chat, let us know. 1, 2, or 3. We need you. There will be a slight delay.
Slight delay. The delay is always unnerving, isn't it?
Come on. We were just talking about... Okay, there we go.
2. All right. So we're going to walk through the open door on the left. All right. Let's see what happens here. All right. So here we go. Oh, sorry. Now we got a 3, but we're too late. We made our decision already. Here we go.
No going back.
Oh, no going back. Oh, now look at all the delays. Sorry, guys. Yeah, we got the 2 and that was it. That's funny. All right. So here we go.
You have to be first next time.
Yeah, you have to be first. So as you step into the room, a voice from the void booms. Dance like no one is watching, encrypt like everyone is. Okay, so yeah, a little bit of fanboy stuff here. But anyways, slightly unnerved, you decide that this is a good time to protect the data at rest that's in your account. We're going to start with the key management service. All right. I hope a few people other than just me on chat got the reference here, but I'll just let it sit and you can probably Google it and find out where we're going with this. Okay, so let's look at our first OrbitOps template. And I probably am logged out at this point, but let me just refresh these screens quickly. Okay, we're good. Okay, so I'm in our demo account and we're going to go over to CloudFormation. And you can see that we've got, I feel like a magician. You can see that there's nothing in this hand, nothing in this hand. Okay, so let's just start. One of the things that we did when we built out OrbitOps was we tried as best we could to handle different use cases for folks, right? Because for us, we do everything in pipelines. We check code in, we run AWS CLI commands to deploy those things out, run validation checks against those templates before they're pushed out. But we also know that in some cases, if you're early in your journey, maybe you don't have experience, right? And we're asking you to make a pretty big change in the first place, right? Moving from something to AWS, there's a lot of change here. So you might find yourself in a situation where you're like, yeah, aspirational goal is a pipeline to do this in an automated way. But I think for now, we're just going to deploy through the console like this. Okay. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take kind of what I would call the beginner route here and just upload these templates and run them. I want to show you kind of how all of this works. Okay. Perfect. So let's upload our first template. And we talked a little bit about the key management service. Okay. I've cheated a little bit, just like a cooking show. I've got all this prepared already, just like you're watching somebody magically make macarons on TV. So we've got our first template, and this is where it's going to start getting dicey. I was talking to Taz and Chloe before we started. I ran this all day with the hopes that we're ready to go, and it works perfectly. So let's see what happens. We're going to create our first stack. Okay, so if you're not familiar with CloudFormation, a stack is really just a collection of resources that you wanted to manage together, okay? So in this case, we have a template. We're going to show the template for one of these at the end of this, but the template in our case is a YAML file that describes the KMS key that we're going to create, the key management key, okay? And you can see at the bottom, what we've done is we've used something in CloudFormation called metadata, and we did this purposely. Even though it's not the way that we deploy, we wanted to be able to help folks that are maybe just getting started. Like I mentioned before, metadata allows us to configure the console, right? So we can logically organize these components here. And in CloudFormation speak, these are parameters. Okay, so think of a parameter as just a variable, an input. So what you're doing here is we're taking input into this template while the stack is created. So what we've got are some basic things. Okay, we've got key configuration. One of the hard lessons that we learned early on in our days building solutions on AWS was that you really want to be careful with a KMS key, and I'll tell you why. Mm-hmm. If you create a KMS key and then you use that key, let's say to encrypt data in an S3 bucket, and then you delete that key, it's not going to end the way that you think, right? You've just lost access to everything there. Luckily, Amazon is really smart, and they have basically built in, I'll call it a cooldown period, to use the word from an auto-scaling thing, right? When you delete that key, it doesn't immediately go away, okay? I'm reading as I... Yeah, you get a little grace period, right? And I think the default grace period is 7 days. You can see we've got a much higher one here. Okay, so we're going to say when we delete this key, keep it around for 30 days after that deletion command, just in case we have that kind of uh-oh moment and we got to go back. Okay, we want to get that key back.
And so what it will do is it discontinues using it, right?
Yeah.
Like it will no longer be used, but we still have record somewhere should we need it, right?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, so if you go into the KMS console, it'll actually change the status. I want to say it's just is marked available, but then it will move to pending deletion, I think is what they say. So yeah, it's there, and you can, it's almost like the trash bin on your laptop, right? You can recover it if you need to. Okay. Yep.
Eventually consistent key deletion.
There we go. There we go. And I also like the comment before, from the same person, deploy the bugs. All right, here we go. So at the bottom of this, another really simple thing that we see people overlook all the time is tagging. Just from the very beginning, tag your resources. Come up with a list of standard tags that you're going to use for everything that you are going to build. That's what I'll call a taggable resource. So in all of our templates, you're going to see a common theme. We always tag with the environment. And that goes back to something that we said earlier on, right? Being able to use those same templates across multiple environments. Does it look slightly different in production versus dev? Okay. Mm-hmm. We want to know who owns this resource. Let's say I want to delete this key, right? But it's not mine, but somebody's asked me to clean up the old keys. Now I know who the owner is and how to contact that owner and say, hey, do you still need this key? Is this actually usable? Like, is it somewhere? Because we're trying to clean up some old resources in the account. That's kind of what we do for standard tags.
It's actually a really cool idea.
It's funny. Like, it seems obvious when you see it, but a lot of people really struggle. I think what happens with tags is people try to think of every possible key value pair that they could ever want to know or ever need forever, right? It's like trying to boil the ocean. Just pick a few that make sense, and start with something, because you can always refine it later on, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't really mention at the beginning, this service was really kind of born out of necessity too. Taz and Chloe know this. Curious Orbit is a boutique consulting shop. We're a small group of people. And the way that we've been able to grow our business over time is through automation, right? We have to reduce the lead time it takes from when somebody asks us for something to getting it done. And tagging is really important for that as well, because tagging can really help you with a lot of automation later on, right? So when we deploy these stacks in our own account for testing, we have another tag that we add that's just called retain equals yes or no. And then there's a Lambda function that fires every night and looks at all the stacks and says, okay, is it retain? No, blow it away, clean it all up. So lots of automation that you can do. Yeah. Otherwise we get big bills as we test a whole bunch of stuff and it just sits, right? So anyways, we're going to deploy KMS. Now, all of what we're going to see here, we're going to kind of take an easy route here and say, you should absolutely understand what these are. You can tag your stacks. That's what I just gave you an example of, the retain key, right? So I would normally have in a script something that said like this, retain no. So now when the Lambda function runs later, it will clean it up. Okay.
Yep.
You can define your permissions. I am using a role here that allows us to do whatever we want, so we don't have to worry about that. But you could add some specific permissions. A policy. Stack policies are really important. Basically, it's a way to protect yourself against yourself, is the way that I think about it. It's kind of like an "are you sure" thing. Once you apply a stack policy, you can protect resources in that stack from, accidentally getting them updated or accidentally deleting them. So stack policy is good. What happens if the stack doesn't deploy properly? Roll back. So there's a bunch of things that you can do here. Normally we put this all in a CI template, but for today, we're just going to accept all the defaults. You get the typical review screen for these services, and we're going to scroll to the bottom and say create.
And there's those keys, exactly what we had filled out earlier on that previous page.
Yeah, you got it. Okay. So this will take a few minutes. And unfortunately, this is the one that we kind of have to wait for before we can get back to our story, because it's going to be the foundation of pretty much everything else. Okay.
It's O'Gallerdop's fault for picking number 2, right?
Yeah, there you go.
The one person who picked number 2.
Yeah, we went that way, right? So KMS, again, it's for me, it's kind of like tagging. And I think the quote that I borrowed earlier, and I'm paraphrasing because I'm not sure if I got it quite right, is just the way that we think about this all the time. Just if you can encrypt it, just encrypt it. It gives you an additional layer of protection. And nowadays, you always hear the horror stories when there's a misconfiguration, and it's just really easy to protect that important data by encrypting anything at rest, right? So just always do it. It's a starting block for us, a building block.
Absolutely. I think that's so important, because if it is sitting there, there is a chance someone can access it. There's always that risk for you.
Yeah.
But even if they do access it, good luck.
I know.
Good luck figuring it out with an encryption applied to it. It's just not going to happen.
Oh, speaking of keys, the other thing that we always try to do is I always mess this acronym up, but it's a CMK. It's either a customer managed key, I think it is, a CMK. Mm-hmm. You can use KMS keys that are provided to you by KMS for the service. KMS. Too many acronyms. They even mess me up still. We use our own custom keys, CMKs. Sure. They give you a little more flexibility, right? Like I can set the rotation on it to happen yearly. Gives you some audit trail. Also gives you the ability to set your own key policy, which is required for these. Just somebody said audit earlier in the chat, right? This is a great way again to understand who or what is interacting with these keys, because you're gonna audit or log it all. We're gonna show you how to do that. Right. Yeah, better safe than sorry. I like that. Easy way to think about it. Let's see if this is done. This is like watching a kettle boil too, right? It's always going to take longer than you think.
That's right.
Yeah, I think we're almost done. We're creating an alias. Oh, here's another little quick tip for everybody. Create aliases for your keys because what you're going to get here is a very long key identifier. And it's great programmatically, less great for a human brain. You know, tell me that 32 digit character string again. You know that off the top of your head. Not necessarily easy. So we create aliases as a quick way to remember. Customer master key.
Yeah, someone just said that that's the acronym. But also that you pay millions for this on premises. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's really expensive. So the pricing model for KMS makes it almost a no-brainer. As soon as we start talking about pricing, I always preface the conversation with always check the latest pricing page for anything that comes out of my mouth that is about pricing, just to be sure. And always remember that pricing is different across regions. But if I recall, the last time we looked, I think it's $1 per month per key. And then you pay for basically cryptographic operations on those keys. But you're now talking about millions of operations against those keys before they really start making a dent in anything. So it's really cost effective.
That's awesome.
So
also CloudFormation is cost effective because you're not paying for anything besides the resources.
You got it. Yeah, no charge for CloudFormation, just the resources that it deploys. Yep. There we go. So here's our first stack done. And I like the customer master key, and they can be customer managed or AWS managed. So we've got acronyms on the acronyms. So I tend to always do the customer managed. So CMCMKs. All right. There we go.
Also, shout out to Chad. If that, I think that's your username. Is that Thorsten in chat watching? He's one of our the community heroes, one of the AWS community heroes.
Oh, so, great.
Awesome to see you in with the show. Yep, that is him. I thought I recognized that Twitch username. So welcome.
That's perfect. All right, so here we go.
Okay, DevTools. Yep.
We have our key, right? DevTools hero. Okay, so here we go. What are we going to do next? As we finish protecting our data, you start to hear the distant beat of EDM. Okay, the music grows louder. Laser lights. You see a door. Let's head for that door. All right, so here we go. We've been immediately transported right back to where our adventure started. We're slightly confused, but we finished a task, so we're feeling pretty good. And we realize that we're back in this original room, but we're no longer alone. Okay? I put this in for my wife because she does not like spiders at all. So when I made her read this, I knew what the reaction was going to be, sort of like leaning back from the screen, even just from a fake spider. We see a spider in the corner. It notices us, starts moving towards us. What do we want to do?
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. Let's just. Is there a nope out of here? Is that an option?
Stop right at this point. Yeah.
I'm gonna say 2.
You're gonna say 2?
But I don't know. So let's wait for what.
Let's see what chat
other
says.
People say.
Fight the spider. Make a quick exit. Mess with the many locks on our right. Okay, we got our first one. The first one. We'll just go with the first response. It's 1.
Hey, we're in agreement. We got two ones.
2 ones. All right.
We're fighters.
We're fighters. All right. All right. Hey, I know that Twitch handle. Hey, Travers. Just to give Travers a shout out. Travers is actually a team member of ours, and Travers spends a fair amount of his waking time thinking about and writing CloudFormation templates. So, hey, Travers, it's good to see you. And okay, now we're looking at chat here. Kevin is one of our most frequent viewers, so he's hangs out and chat with us in our Twitch channel all the time. So hey guys, fans. Yeah, there Welcome. We go. Nice to see everybody. So here we go. We're gonna fight. Not necessarily a good choice, right? Other than our knowledge of CloudFormation, we don't have any weapons. We're unarmed. So the spider quickly wraps us up, and it's gonna store us for later.
Having a real Hobbit moment there.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? Now, I said that I grew up reading these books, and when I made a bad decision, I did exactly what we say on this screen. Luckily, it's just a book. We can flip back a couple pages. So let's try this again, okay? Don't pick number 1. What do we want to do now? Somebody pick something else. 2 or 3?
Make a quick exit or mess with the locks?
Mess with the locks.
I've been watching a lot Not number one. Not number one.
Money. Yeah, that somebody's going to yell pineapple.
That's the end of that storyline.
Yeah,
that is the saddest outcome.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, so we got a first 3. All right, so we're messing with all the locks on the door, even though the spider's coming for us. We're feeling confident. So let's do that.
I especially feel this one. I've been watching a lot of the lock picking lawyer on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
So I've seen hours of people picking locks. I've never done it myself, but I feel like I might have some.
Oh, that's funny.
Experience by osmosis.
That's funny. We were talking in our stand-up. Sometimes our stand-ups drift a little bit. Travers knows where this is going. And I was talking to the guys on Monday morning, and I had discovered YouTube channels where they're basically just doing like power washing and stuff. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I'm sure
like
it's
just
extremely satisfying.
Oh yeah, and they put like dance music over it, and it's just some person like power washing their driveway or something. And 45 minutes later, I'm like, why am I still watching this person power wash their deck? It's it's strange. Okay, so here we go. Our must-have security service. So we walk through the door, and there's a lot of things in this room that aren't necessarily friendly to us. Ogres, goblins, and the ever-dreaded bards, right? The worst D&D character that you could ever be. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start protecting other resources in our environment. We're going to look at a number of services. And these are a bunch of services, again, that are just like tagging, right? They're really important, but in the excitement, the time crunch to get things done, they're often overlooked, and then they're put in place after the fact. So we're going to look at CloudTrail. We're going to look at config. We're looking at guard duty and security hub. So let's jump back to the console. There's the session expired that I was waiting for. Get back in here. And we'll just refresh both of these because I'm going to have to jump between a couple consoles here. So we're going to start with CloudTrail. Okay. So we're going to create another stack. Oh, sorry. No, we need... Yeah. See that? This is why you got to be careful on your demos. CloudTrail, config, those services need somewhere to write to. Right? We're gonna basically dump audit information somewhere. So we're gonna create a simple storage service, an S3 bucket. That's our first step. Okay, so we've uploaded that template, and just like before, we'll give it a name.
And just to reiterate, for someone who has a subscription to this, you would have access to these exact same templates that we're using, right? You
got it. I downloaded these templates basically the other day, and just started obsessing to make sure that we weren't going to have that sort of demo moment. So yeah, these are the exact templates.
That's awesome. So if anybody's, has any of these use cases. Oh, sorry, Chloe. I just interrupted you.
No, I just said that's super cool.
Yeah. And what we've got, again, parameters, right? So we've tried to set defaults. These would be the best practices that if we were deploying this for one of our customers, right? I mentioned earlier, we use the same templates here, right? Or if we were building out something of our own, some sort of service, we're going to use the same template. So you can see we've got lifecycle management set up here. Basically, how long do we want to keep the logs for? After 365 days, we've got a lifecycle rule that deletes them. We've got a logging bucket. So anytime somebody or something accesses data within this S3 bucket, we're actually creating 2 buckets in this template, what we call the central bucket, right? And the logging bucket. Do we need versioning enabled? We've got that to default. Okay. We've got the resource tags at the bottom, again, standard across all the templates. And now we need the ARN. Okay. So here's another debate. Is this ARN or ARN? Is it an
ARN?
I always spell out the acronyms. I'm so bad with acronyms, so I've got to spell them out.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. And it's also an AMI, right? It's not the word that people turn it into.
People say AMI.
I know. It's an AMI. PC versus Mac kind of debate again. So we need the ARN of that key that we created. You could take these and jam them into some sort of CI script. Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit about kind of what's on the roadmap for some of these services later on. But for the time being, I'm just going to hop back over here. And one of the features of CloudFormation is outputs. Okay. And essentially an output, you can configure every resource that you're going to deploy here has at least a single output, I think, right? A name, a logical ID, something like that. Many of them have lots of different outputs that are available. So you can see that we've created outputs for our ARN, and this is the unique identifier right, for that. And here's our alias. We're going to use the ARN. We're going to come back to these export names later on. Okay, so for now, we're just going to grab this and we're going to dump it in here. What's the ARN of the CMK that we created to protect that data at rest? And we'll just say next. Okay, I won't go through this again. We all kind of know what this is. We'll create next. There's our summary. And this is what Taz mentioned a bit ago, right? All the parameters that we've set. And then we're just going to say create. So what's happening here is we are creating two buckets. The security, the centralized security bucket, and then a logging bucket. Okay, and these should go pretty quickly. On top of that, one of the things that we try to do is we're going to talk about Security Hub here in a minute. And there are some really basic things you can do to clear out findings in Security Hub when you're building these environments out. So things like, ensuring that somebody's using SSL, somebody or something is using SSL when they're talking to these buckets. So we've got bucket policies in place that in this example, ensure that you're using SSL. If you want to delete something, you have to provide MFA. We also give both CloudFormation and the AWS config service access to this bucket because they need to write data to it. Okay, so there we go. There's our bucket up and running. The next thing that we want to do is now some of the security services. We're going to do Trail first. So let's pull up those same templates. We'll grab our Trail template and we'll deploy this one. Give the stack a name.
Brett, are we going to be able to see the actual template?
Yeah, I'm going to pull some templates at the end here, and we'll just show you kind of what it looks like. Okay, so again, outputs here. There's the name of the bucket that we want to use. And, I just want to make sure everybody's aware of this. All this could be part of your deploy script if you wanted. We're just showing you here that you've got some flexibility. So provide it with the bucket, provide it again with the ARN of the CMK, and we'll skip through these. Now, here's something that's different. Okay, whenever you're deploying resources within or from CloudFormation, the moment you do anything with identity and access management, you must approve that you're doing that. So on the console, you have to acknowledge that you're creating identity and access management or IAM resources. If you're doing this in your CI script, there's just a value that you can pass in the deploy script. It's just capabilities, and then there's a couple options. We're going to use capability IAM. Okay, so we're going to acknowledge that yes, we're okay with it creating IAM resources, and we'll create a stack for CloudTrail. Okay, and as this is going, what we're going to do is we'll grab another tab here. We'll jump over to CloudTrail, and there you go. Okay, so we've got our trail built already. Couple events already, right? You can see us doing all the things here. So that's running. This is probably complete. Oh, not quite yet. Okay, so we're getting close. Okay. So you can see here, roles, policies, those are the IAM resources that it popped up the console and asked us to confirm. Okay, so now we've got CloudTrail running. We'll just keep pushing through these security services, and we'll do AWS config as well. This is the one that always, this is the template that we don't see eye to eye on this one. So let's see what happens. The bucket.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Let's get rid of that just so it's less confusing. So we're going to basically use the same information again. Okay. Now, one of the features of config is what's called a configuration snapshot. And think of the snapshot as, if I want to use an analogy again, I would almost call it like a balance sheet. At that moment in time, that tells us what is in that account and how it's configured. In theory, 1 minute after you've created your configuration snapshot, it may no longer be valid, right? Because things are changing maybe. But at that moment in time, that's what was in your account. So that's kind of what I think of. I think of it as a balance sheet. Okay, so you've got options here. So this is something that we've again tried to do as best we could. These are all values that you would set when you're building out your templates. we've taken those, turned them into parameters and put them into these values. And then just like we've done a bunch of times already, grab the key that we need.
Grab the ARN.
The ARN, yeah.
ARN.
And you can see, again, we're doing the same thing. So I know a few people that are probably watching are like, ooh, but you're not supposed to mix IAM security related stuff with other templates. It's a valid point, okay? What we see, right, it's one thing to talk about a process like that. At least in a lot of cases that we're dealing with our customers, the teams are small. They tend to work on a whole bunch of stuff. So we've taken, in order to try to keep some of these templates a little easier to deploy, and we have put some things together that maybe, you know, depending on the industry that you work in, some compliance requirements, you may have to separate them. But what's great about this is you could just take these templates. They're yours to do what you want with within the accounts. You could, if you had compliance requirements, you could just take those IAM components, put them in another template and deploy all those separately. So now you've got that kind of separation, right? Taz is responsible for IAM. Chloe is responsible for the services. So Taz would give Chloe all the info she'd need, or programmatically to deploy these other templates. So it's up to you how you want to do this.
Yeah, and what I love about this, because one thing that comes to mind is, you know, the internet has CloudFormation templates out there, right? Like that you could probably go copy and paste or whatever. But what I think is so great about this is that these are being actively maintained, actively used. Like this isn't just something that you go find on Stack Overflow or something and then run, cross your fingers, hope it works. Like you all are using these actively.
Yeah. All the time, right? All the time. And it's funny that you mentioned that, Taz, because Travers and I were talking about this just this morning. We were doing something else and we have a script it's basically a user data script for booting up a machine, right? We're gonna basically, when that machine comes to life, that EC2 instance comes to life the first time, run this script.
Sure.
Well, in that case, that script actually came from an Amazon blog post. We know it's a reputable source, but we didn't write it. So now it's like, okay, well, what's it do? All right, let's go and rip this stuff apart. And you're spot on. You can go download templates from anywhere, but we're actively supporting these as feature sets change. Config is a great example of that.
Right.
Up until, again, times lost all meeting, I want to say sometime in February, config didn't support CMKs. You had to use server-side encryption with keys provided by S3. We've updated this template already when we saw that release come out because we prefer to use CMKs. If it was us, that's the way that we would do it. Okay, so we went back, we modified the template, generated a new release for it, and away we go. So now if you wanted to use that, you can now use your own CMKs with it as well.
And you know, I think that the updating part is so huge. A lot of times when you're just searching for stuff just randomly, a lot of the stuff might be from like 2016, 2017. Yeah. It may have worked back then, but I can tell you that AWS has added features since 2017.
Yeah.
Across basically any service you could think of.
Maybe just one or two features.
One or two things have been added since like a few years ago.
You got it. And you know, I guess the thing that's most challenging about that is that it may still work. It probably will, right? But the challenge would be, you know, that you're maybe missing some of those new features that are actually really important. Guard duty. What's guard duty? The way that I think about guard duty is it's a machine learning based solution that identifies, I'll call it, abnormal activity within your account, right? It could be at the overall AWS account level. It could be at specific EC2 instance level, right? So basically it's looking for AWS account compromise. It's looking for indications that an EC2 instance in your environment has been compromised. It's super cost effective. You can see how hard this is to deploy. There's no parameters, okay? It's basically, you know, boom, we're done. Now, with a giant caveat here, and this is a good time to bring this up, we're doing everything in a single account. Even our smaller customers now don't have single account deployments. They have multi AWS account deployments. So for these types of services, in order to keep this relatively simple for today, we're deploying everything in one account. But we have this idea of a management account and a member account, right? You've got AWS organizations, guard duty, security hub. There's a bunch of services that do that. So in the repo for these, we also have management templates We're not drinking our own Kool-Aid here because of some of the complexity of these templates we find makes it challenging for people to deploy. So in this case, we're not using conditions because it changes the template so much. So you've got a management template to deploy in that, what we'll call just centralized security account. And then you've got member templates that you could deploy in all the other ones to set all this up. Okay. But
Sure.
It's
Why
relatively
is that
painless.
so helpful, would you say, even for your smaller customers to use multi-account strategies?
Well, okay. So there's technical reasons and there's what I would call a non-technical reason. You can spend a lot of time analyzing huge spreadsheets that come from Amazon around your consumption, right? Really detailed information about how did you spend that $100 last month in the account, right? The problem is, in a lot of cases, even our smaller customers, one of the most effective strategies for reducing cost in your Amazon account is charge somebody for what they use, right? Don't let it just go into a giant bucket and somebody else is responsible for paying for it. Charge that department for the $50 they used last month. They'll be much more inclined to figure out if they can get that $50 to $30. So what we find is you can get a giant Excel sheet from Amazon at the end of the month and spend a whole bunch of time analyzing that. Or I could have department 1 with an AWS account, department 2 with an AWS account, department 3 with an AWS account. Now I get a single bill at the end of the month because I'm using AWS organizations, and Amazon does that heavy lifting for me. You spent $100, department A used 50, department 2 used 25, department 3 used 25. Done. So that's kind of what I would consider a non-technical reason a lot of our customers do it. You may also have differences in the way you're going to handle that billing. So we work with one customer. They're in Canada, the US, and a number of countries in Latin America. The tax laws in Latin America are significantly different than the tax laws in the other countries. So the accounting departments have to operate in different ways. So we have an organization for what we call LA, right? Latin America. We have an organization for US and an organization for Canada because they have different finance processes, right? Different requirements from the government. So you've got that reason. The other reason is what I would consider more of like a technical thing that you could think of is if you're mixing development and production together, now you don't know what dev and production cost, but you also now open yourself up for possible issues. Something goes wrong in dev and maybe it cascades into the production environment. I was talking already about people are distractible, right? You're doing 5 things. You think you're in dev, but you run that script against prod and you have that oh moment, right? I'm sure everybody's had that at some point in their career where you're like, did I really just do that? No, I probably didn't. So you can create this thing that Amazon, I think Amazon calls it, lots of people talk about this idea of blast radius. Mm-hmm. So now you know you're in the prod account, right? Yep. You've got that little container, you've isolated it. So really, Chloe, to answer your question, it comes down to billing. And it comes down to the establishing blast radius between the accounts, right?
That's super interesting. Kind
of why we see people do it. Okay. So let's get guard duty running. As we're waiting for this, interesting story with guard duty. That same customer that I was talking about, Canada, US, and Latin America, most of the team works out of the Canadian office here in the Greater Toronto area. We have guard duty running in all those accounts. One of the administrators, they have an office in Vancouver. He jumps on a plane, right? Flies to Vancouver, and we get an alert from guard duty saying user A just logged in from an abnormal IP address. That's the type of stuff that guard duty, that's the type of insight that guard duty provides to you. And we were able to look at that and go, oh, okay, yeah, we know exactly what that is. And guard duty is really flexible. We could create a whitelist for that because now we know the IP range in the Vancouver office. We're going to have administrators logging in from there every once in a while. So that's okay traffic. Okay. And you can see how fast this gets deployed. It's up and running, immediately starting to collect data for us. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty slick stuff. So we've got, I think if I go back to my little cheater slide here, oh, we got Hub. Okay. I forgot about Hub. So let's look at Hub. Again, this is a relatively painless deployment as well. Security Hub, and we'll talk a little bit about what this is when it's deploying for us.
Awesome. And as we walk through and fill some of this out, for those who are just joining, just wanted to welcome you to Howdy Partner. We're here with Curious Orbit, and basically what Howdy Partner is it's a weekly series where we get to meet with amazing partners and see the cool things that they're working on. And so this week it's Curious Orbit, and Brett here is going over their, could I call it your cloud formation repository that people can gain access to? Of vetted templates that just make it super easy to kind of drag and drop Lego, use the parts as you need it to build out your infrastructure.
That's exactly it. So we're building out sort of what we call the must-have security services, things that are really easy to deploy, they're cost-effective, but tend to get overlooked in a lot of implementations. So we're waiting for Security Hub. It's probably done. Yeah, it's done. Security Hub is, so my very first IT job, I worked in systems management. So things like Tivoli, BMC, kind of those, what they would use, I think they still call them, but kind of enterprise monitoring tools. And the holy grail of that space was always a single pane of glass, right? That term is still around. How do we get events from all these different tools into one spot so the folks that need to know what's going on can see it in one spot? I kind of think it's maybe an oversimplification, but that's kind of what Security Hub is. It's a single pane of glass for all the security related events, right? You could, even if you just have a single deployment, a single AWS account or a multi AWS account, it has that idea of management and member structure. And we can define a management account and pull everything into it. Okay.
Yep.
What's also great about this is it has a bunch of security standards built in. You've got the CIS Foundations benchmark. AWS has a Foundations security standard now as well. Both of those are turned on by default. There's a PCI one that you can enable. Okay. So right out of the box, within like 24 hours, if we were looking at this, we now have reporting against those security standards, CIS benchmark, the AWS framework. We also have guard duty already running. So Security Hub will pull all the guard duty alerts together as well. So now you have that single pane of glass, to borrow that term from the systems management space, where you can see everything. Okay. And like everything in AWS, this can be highly automated. It's just a collection of APIs. So if you get a finding in Security Hub that says X, you could then customize this solution to invoke a Lambda function for you to actually remediate it automatically. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we kind of wrap up. Okay. So that gets us through here. We're done. So what's happened here? As we work, the room's occupants are sure you must be a wizard, right? All the stuff that we've just done, and they keep their distance. So we lucked out there, and we just casually walk through the door. We find ourselves in another room, okay? And the title of this slide should make us worry already.
Yeah.
We've got a hall filled. I don't know what that word is. Filled. There we go. Just making up words at this point. All filled up with ghouls. And all of them are focused on us. Okay. We have to make a decision what we're going to do here, and we need to do it quickly. Are we going to defend ourselves, or are we going to make a break for that door? What do we want to do? So we'll leave it to chat again. One or two.
Are we defending?
Whoever comes in first.
Or running?
Yeah. Defend or run. One or two. Let's see what we get.
Yeah, the delay is real on this thing.
I know.
Okay, we got Grizz 10 with the defend.
Grizz says, okay, that's what we're going to do. Probably know how this is going to go, right? Based on the last one. Well, at least our AWS account is secure, okay? And here you go. Didn't you read the part where I said the room was filled with ghouls? And we didn't finish our self-defense course, so we're going to join the ghouls in that hall for eternity.
Oh.
But we're lucky again, right?
Choose your own adventure.
Yeah, 13-year-old me just flips back and we make a different choice. So we're going to make a break for that door instead. Much wiser choice at this point. So here we go. As we go through that door.
It's funny, you do choose your own adventure the way I do certain storyline based video games, where I always put a save point before like a dialogue.
Yeah.
I'll choose one option, see what happens. If I don't like it, I go back to that save.
Yeah, I've never done that. I just play through one giant save. And that was total sarcasm. I know that doesn't come. I have so many saves. I don't have space on the disk anymore, just in case I want to go back. So right. Here's what we find. We're making a run for it. We see light. Okay, so we know there's a door. As we step through it, we find ourselves in an open field. This is feeling a little better, right? Lots of villages. The question that we have now is, how are we going to get to all these villages, right? We can network them together. So let's build a network, right? What we're going to do here is we're going to create ourselves a virtual private cloud, and then we're going to do some additional little things, features in the virtual private cloud that are easy to overlook again, but provide you with a lot of value to kind of help protect data while it's in transit, understand what's happening in that environment. So let's jump back to the console and we'll create that virtual private cloud.
And so once we finish this, we will have essentially set down the base framework for anybody who wants to start building in AWS. We'll have all of the base security features, the logging, CloudTrail, the security services on top that's monitoring all those things. Now we're going to create a VPC for anyone who's ready to start deploying resources.
Yeah, doing whatever you need to do inside here. So if you're not familiar with a VPC, virtual private cloud, I think Amazon has a perfect definition for it. It's a logically isolated network within Amazon where you can control all the routing, all the security. You decide what it's connected to. When they say logically isolated, you could actually create a VPC with no connectivity to the outside world whatsoever. No internet connection, no connection back for a hybrid solution. It's just an island, okay? And what we've got here is a basic configuration. So you need that CIDR range, right? The container, for lack of a better word, for that network, okay? And then we're going to subdivide that network into subnets, no different than what you would do on-prem. That's what I love about AWS, right? As much as it's new, and new isn't the right word, but it's different than what you might do, there's a lot of familiarity here. So if you've got that experience, a lot of it will just easily translate over. So we're going to subdivide this larger network into subnets. And another thing that
I've got a networking quiz for chat. If you
go for it.
How many IP addresses do you have with a /20? Let's see if anyone comes back with that.
Yeah, somebody's quickly Googling it right now. That's how I do network math all the time.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't try to remember it.
I know /32 is 1.
Yeah, there you go.
It's minus 32, and then you bring it up.
Something with exponents. Yeah.
I'll once somebody answers, I'll show you. I'll tell you my trick, which I'm sure somebody knows, but it just works for my brain. So one of the things that we want to do with a VPC, right? We've got, if you think about the global infrastructure, we have a region. So a VPC is a regional service, right? And then within every region, we have at least 2 availability zones. Okay? So standard then would be to build out your solutions across 2 availability zones in that VPC. So that way, if you need to bring something down, or, Chloe, you said this before we got started today, everything fails, right? We're kind of planning for a failure here in the demo at some point. Things fail in Amazon, right? It's going to happen. So we need to build out solutions that are resilient, just like we do on-prem. So what we've got here is a template, a regional VPC spread across 2 availability zones. And then we've got, you can see here, public subnets, private subnets. Those are spread across the 2 AZs. So we have 1 private and 1 public subnet in, let's say, AZ1. And then we've got 1 public and 1 private in AZ2. Okay. Do we want this VPC to have access to the internet? Yes. This is going to deploy what Amazon calls an internet gateway, an IGW. Okay. So give us that outbound connection. And then the standard tags that we've seen over and over again. Okay. Standard stuff, review, and then create the stack. Okay, so this will take a few minutes. So I'll tell you my trick. This is how I always do CIDR math outside of Googling it. I know that a /24 is 256 IP addresses. If you go up by 1, so you go from a 24 to a 25, it halves it. So now I've got 128. If you go down, so you go from a 24 to a 23, you double it. So 512. So you can just do that ×2 thing. That works really well. Here's an AWS quiz question for you. If you've got, let's do a /24. How many usable IP addresses are in your /24 subnet?
Ooh. So we're not asking just how many there are.
How many usable?
How many usable?
This is tricky. AWS reserves some.
Yeah, you got it. Let's see if chat knows.
Let's see if chat does.
Yeah.
Grizz10, no idea. Love the honesty.
Yeah.
That is a correct answer as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. There we go. We got
Father
5.
Goblin.
Father
I think
Goblin.
it's funny we're referring to chat as a person.
Chat is always a single person.
Single entity. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you got it. 5, right? So you have the 2 standard, right? The network and the broadcast, and then Amazon reserves 3. As we're waiting for this, we'll let somebody answer. What are those 3 that Amazon reserves? What are they used for? Because this is going to take us about another minute.
Father Goblin was quick for the first answer. Let's see if they can come through again.
Knows what those three addresses are for. This is actually the template that takes the longest to do. I've got a lot of stuff in this template. We'll show you at the end.
I was also going to say, like, creating a VPC can be pretty tedious manually. Yeah. You also have a lot of small details that you could get stuck on that would just make something not be able to communicate with something else. So having a template like this would be very useful and practical for almost anything you do on AWS.
Yeah, I would agree. Like there's lots of opportunities if you're doing this manually to just get something slightly different than how you did it. Let's say, did you use that environment example, prod versus dev? It's just something slightly different that makes it challenging later on, right? So yeah, you're absolutely right. Having this template just streamlines this process. So what do we get? Father Goblin, route table, future, and subnet. You're close. I think if we combine, I'm not going to try to say the next username. I will mess that one up.
Thurston.
I want to say
his name.
It's reminding me of an adult beverage that is a good one, but somebody can fill that in. Routing, DNS, and future. That's it. Yeah, you got it. Okay, we're really close. There we go.
Our DevOps hero again for the win.
Yeah, there we go. Gold star. Okay, so now we've got our VPC built, right? So now we've got that logically isolated network segment in Amazon. We've spread it across a couple availability zones. We've connected it to the outside world. All the route tables are set, right? So now we've got routing inside the VPC. That's there by default. But now we've also got route tables for the public and the private subnets so they can talk to outside, right? Through the NAT gateways, through the internet gateways. So Chloe, to your point, a really kind of standard reference architecture deployment here for a VPC that you can deploy across any environment. Okay. Now, the other things that were on the slide before we got in here were flow logs. Okay. So let's get flow logs going. And we'll talk a little bit about flow logs. Flow logs is kind of one of those things that is, I would consider kind of a must-have tool. So what we've got here is we've got a basic flow log setup. Flow logs allow you to look at specific elastic network interfaces, ENIs. It allows you to look at subnets. It allows you to look at the entire VPC. We look at the entire VPC, and I'll tell you why in a second. So we're just going to tie it to, this is our Howdy partner VPC, and it logs to CloudWatch logs. So we're just going to say, how long do we want to retain those logs for in CloudWatch logs? We're just say 90 days, right? You could turn this into whatever you would like. Okay. We'll deploy this. Just like we saw with a couple other things, we've got a service here that's talking to another service. So we need a role. Okay, so we're creating some IAM resources here. Flow logs is talking to CloudWatch logs. So we'll acknowledge that we're okay with that. And away we go. This is a fantastic troubleshooting tool, right? I can tell you that when we're working with a customer that is having routing problems, there's 2 things that are usually the issue. I guess let's pass it back to chat again since we've been doing that. That's a good idea. What is one of the most common reasons why resources in a VPC can't see another resource in the same VPC? Yeah.
Most common reason.
Oh, there we go.
Can't see each other. Oh, no.
Oh, haha. That's permissions. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by permissions? And now I'm going to tell you typos. That's probably the right answer. Okay. So why did this fail? Yeah, I should have known better than this. This is a good example of something that we're going to update in this template after the stream. There's actually specific timeframes that you can use in flow logs. 7 days, 12 days, 14 days, something like that. And 90 days is one of them, 45 is not. So what we're going to do is I'm going to say I did that on purpose just so you could see a template fail. So that's my excuse. So let's blow that one away. Okay. And
Easy enough.
We'll just do it again. Okay. Select that same template, flow log. This time we won't try to be fancy. Right? We'll say same VPC. We'll leave it at the default of 90 days. Travers, if you're still hanging out, you can add a card for that one and we'll make a change. There we go. So this should work this time. Did we get it? Different security groups?
So that's a good call out in chat so you're able to put in inputs that are not acceptable in that area. Oh, go ahead, Taz. Finish your thought. And something that's like good to establish is those inputs that he's using are actually user defined. And so he could make a field for anything you could possibly want there, and you could call it basically whatever you want. And then we're just taking that input as a variable and using it later on. And so there is a way around that, which is obviously figure out what the defaults are, and then you could make it a drop down as a fill in.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we'll do, right? So if you look here, flow log, actually that's in the log group definition. So I've gone to the wrong doc here, but there would be a list. So we will fix that. That's just oversight on our part. It's actually a good little example of kind of the type of stuff that we'll do, right? If a customer gave us this feedback, this would be exactly what would happen. We would simply look at it and go, oh, yeah, oh, you can't just put any number you want in there. So in CloudFormation, with the parameters, the parameter definition, you can set a default, right? So we can say type is a string, let's say. The default is 45, or not 45 won't work again, 90, right? Let's just do that again. And then we would have a definition there called allowed values, and we would just put the list. And then that way, it's not an open form or a free form text field at that point. You're going to get a drop down. Much better way to do it. Okay. But now we've got our flow log here, and now we've got some work to do after. Somebody said security groups, Father Goblin. That's really 9 times out of 10 the problem, right? You've got a security group configured that doesn't allow that inbound traffic. And flow logs is a fantastic way to see if that is the case, because flow logs in our definition here, or our configuration, is watching all of the traffic regardless of whether it's accepted or rejected, and it's dumping it into CloudWatch logs. So now what we have is we have a log that we could run some queries against. So I could say, okay, if I know the IP address of this instance and I'm supposed to be able to talk to it on port X, but I can't, I could go into flow logs and look for a reject call. And at that point, I know exactly that it's either a network access control list, a NACL, which is defined in these templates, but we don't do them by default, or a security group that's causing that. And then you could work backwards and find it. So that's what I mean, like a really fantastic troubleshooting tool, but it's also a great audit solution as well, right? Being able to go back later and look at the traffic because you're storing it somewhere. Okay. So that's our flow logs. And the last piece that we had here was an endpoint. We're only going to deploy one endpoint here. We're going to stand up a gateway endpoint for S3. What this does is we've got what I'll say services that are VPC aware, right? Like RDS is VPC aware. You deploy it in a VPC. An EC2 instance is VPC aware. A DynamoDB table isn't. An S3 bucket isn't. You don't put it in the VPC, right? So what's going to happen is that if you've got, let's say, an EC2 instance trying to communicate with some other AWS resource that is not VPC aware, that traffic is going to flow out of your VPC over the AWS network to get to that service. Again, depending on your compliance requirements, you might not want that. So Amazon has endpoint services, right? So there are two types of endpoints. There's gateway endpoints and there's what's the other one? Interface endpoints, I think, right? I think that's the name. We're deploying here a gateway endpoint that basically is going to update our route table and say, hey, if you're trying to get to S3, go this way, right? And this keeps it from going out over the public AWS network. So we need the route tables. And here's a great example. These are freeform. Unfortunately, there aren't Amazon parameters that allow us to get a drop down for this. So I do have to go back here, go to the VPC. Yeah, I remember we said all the outputs. I want the private route table. So we can grab this, dump it here, and we're going to put this on both the private route tables so those resources can talk. Okay, so we're going to do both of those.
So endpoints are helpful, again, from a security standpoint, because you're not needing to go out into the public network at all. You can let your resources communicate within their VPC.
You got it, yeah. Sorry, I had a typo back here. That stack that is already
Again,
there.
Typos, reasons why things don't talk
work
to each other. Typos.
Yeah, you got it. Okay, so what's going to happen here is we're updating the route tables, and we're saying basically being able to route that traffic directly to S3. Okay, and there you go. Very, very simple. All right. So that really gets us through our little story here. We've got our virtual private cloud. We've got flow logs for auditing and troubleshooting, and then we've got our endpoint. Okay, so our journey's complete.
So I've got a question for you. So we just put together really quite a bit of stuff. How long do you think, and this is for us or anybody in chat, how long do you think it would take you manually to go and set all this up? Because I'm thinking hours at least. Like you're saving so much time by doing it through a predefined CloudFormation template. And what's even better is you're not writing the CloudFormation template. Yeah. If you weren't here at the beginning, you all have put together, what was it, over 100,000, 110,000 or something lines of CloudFormation that are just ready to be used.
Ready to be used, yeah.
And can be shared with your teammates.
Yeah, yeah. So it's basically a repository of templates that you have access to inside your organization to use. Yeah. So Grizz is saying definitely hours. Yeah, yeah.
Depending on how my day's going, sometimes it feels like it'll take me an hour just to get an S3 bucket up and going. Sometimes, sometimes you just have those days where
totally.
I feel your pain. I know exactly what you're talking about. You're like, no, I've done this 1,000 times. It should work. It's got to be AWS. And then finally you look at it and you're like, yeah, it's not AWS.
It's like, oh, shoot.
Yeah. We joked the other day, I wonder, we need a script that can go through GitLab or our GitLab instance and just look for how many commit messages have the word fixed typo or the phrased fixed typo in them, and compare that to the whole number of commits that have been made, because most times it's typos, right?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
I was messing around with the CDK earlier this week, and basically, I just couldn't get something to run over and over. I was trying to get it to deploy a Lambda. What I realized was I had in my Git ignore file, I was ignoring my JavaScript, or I was ignoring JavaScript files because I was writing it in TypeScript because I wanted it to be compiled later. Yeah. But then I wrote my Lambda in JavaScript instead of TypeScript. Don't mix languages. We talked about that earlier. Don't mix languages.
Yeah.
I did mix languages, but like forever I was like beating my head. I was like, why is this not building my Lambda function? And it's because my code was never actually being pushed to be able to be pulled through the pipeline.
I was working on something the other day, and I had to ask Travers, because like you look at something for so long, you're like, it all looks the same. I'm like, this should absolutely work, right? There's no reason why this isn't working. So I finally give in. I just give up. And I only half joke that most of what we do here is just a simple battle of wills, right? Do you have enough, I guess, perseverance to stick with it and figure it out? Pass it to Travers, and he's like, you're passing a name, not the ARN. And I'm like, oh, like we're having one template do outputs into the other. And I had looked at it for hours and I could not figure out why. And he looked at it for 5 minutes. He's like, yeah, you got to pass the ARN, not the name. So anyways, I'm going to deploy a couple other things, because these are, again, just examples of services that are, well, really cost effective and help you manage your costs. So simple notification service, generate notifications out to humans, other systems, and then AWS budgets, right? How much do you want to spend? And when you hit a threshold on that budget limit, who should you tell? Okay. So let's just have a really quick look at these ones, and we'll finish up our story. So let's do SNS first.
And SNS, for those unfamiliar, is our simple notification service. And so, yeah, it'll allow you to send notifications very simply.
A simple notification. The name is perfect, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So we need, again, encryption. These services, right? When you think about it, I'm gonna basically push a message to a topic, and that topic is immediately going to essentially fan it out to all the subscribers. But while that message is in the SNS service, it's going to be stored on disk somewhere. I want to make sure that it's encrypted while it's there. Okay. Again, this goes back to what we talked about before. There's really no reason not to do this kind of stuff, and it's really easy to do once you've got it set up. So, you know, the saying that I used at the very beginning. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to deploy this.
In chat, AWS doesn't read typo knees. I've never heard that before. I like that.
Yeah, it should. It should. Yeah, it would make my life a lot easier.
We just need machine learning to look at all mistakes and then, oh, this is what you actually meant to say.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so just a couple seconds for that. We now have our topic, and we're going to set our budget. Okay, and budget, the template for the budget is really simple, but the AWS budget offering has so many options. So we've kind of, again, tried to take a stab at what we think makes sense. So what's your budget? Let's just say it's $100. Okay. And now here, this is the right way to do this. And this is what we messed up in that other template, right? Where we had freeform. I can now set up the type of budget. We're just going to do a simple cost budget. Our operator is when it's greater than 100, or sorry, when it's greater than our threshold, generate the notification. We're going to actually generate this on actual, or we could do forecasted. Okay. Mm-hmm. We need that ARN again. So let's go back to SNS, grab the output.
And what is the difference between actual and forecasted?
So actual is what you've spent. And then what they'll do is they'll look at, let's say, what's today? It's the 5th.
Sure.
Yeah. So they'll look at, yeah, there you go. Yeah. They'll look at what your spending is and then forecast out for the time frame that you've set in your budget. So let's just say if you're spending $10 a day, you're 5 days in, 30 days would be $300, and you set their threshold at 250 or something like that. So then when it hits that, if it's forecasting it out, it'll generate an alarm for you.
Got it.
So we're using SNS here. We're setting our budget at, or we're setting our threshold at 75% monthly, and we're just going to put it at US dollars. Okay. And down here again, you can see what is this actually at, the absolute value or a percentage. We're going to say an absolute value. So $75 out of the 100. And just like we've done before, create that stack. Okay, and this should happen really quickly. I won't show you this today, but it is in the it is in the library. Amazon also now has budget anomaly monitoring. So that's a really slick little machine learning solution that allows you to basically look for abnormal spending. So you can put a threshold in again, like a percentage or a dollar figure. And when it sees that change, a drastic change like that, it would do the same thing and generate some outbound notifications for you.
A great use case for this would be is if hypothetically someone wanted to create a cloud-based gaming rig and so chose the biggest and juiciest GPU instances possible, thinking that they would only run them for an hour. Then maybe they accidentally forgot to terminate that instance and let it run for the weekend.
Yeah.
Hypothetical.
Thousands of dollars.
Hypothetical. Yeah. Yeah. I've never left something running just for fun, for a game server or something. Yeah. And I see the question here, or a comment more than a question. I hope he deletes the key later. Absolutely. None of this will survive outside of the demo here, because to your point, or really, there's no way to do a demo like this without letting out some information, right? Like, ARNs and IDs and stuff. So yeah, we're gonna nuke this after.
And that's the great thing about CloudFormation is deleting is there's a big delete button right there on our screen.
Yeah, we'll just nuke all of this. Question: the budget only notifies, right? It won't actually stop something from working. Okay, so this is something that we're working on right now, because the short answer is you can actually now use what they call, I think they call them budget actions. And you can actually have a budget do something for you. It can stop certain things from happening in your account. So it's a great question because it used to just notify you and it was still up to you to go and clean up or stop something, right? Stop that hypothetical game server that you accidentally left running. But now you have budget actions. I don't know when that came out. We haven't worked it in any of the templates yet. Okay.
But yeah, so there's that, and I think what you could have done previously is if you knew where a majority of your spend might be, you can always set a Lambda function that has permissions to go in and turn those things off. If you know that most of your spend is coming from EC2, you get a budget alert, have that go and turn off your EC2 instances. Again, might not want to do that for a prod environment because if it's actually running something important, you probably don't want to just automatically shut everything down. But
turn it off
for a dev environment or something like that, or a sandbox type situation, why not?
Yeah, exactly. That kind of goes back to what we talked about before, the importance of tagging, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like environment equals development. Then you could turn around and say, we did this for a customer. They said, hey, we've got all these development environments that are running all the time, completely, backwards to kind of this idea of infrastructure when you need it, right? EC2 instances when you need it. And what they looked at was they knew that the development team really wasn't doing a whole lot or anything after 8 p.m. So Lambda function fires at 8 p.m. every weeknight, says, show me all the EC2 instances that are marked environment equals dev and let's stop them. And then it fires them up in the morning so that when the dev team comes in, all that stuff is there. Lots of that's again why tagging is really important. Have those standard set of tags when you start.
That's also a sustainable thing to do, which my team's been talking a lot about recently, is that underutilized resources can leave a big carbon footprint. So it's good from a sustainability standpoint as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So this is how long that actually takes. So we deployed, I know this is a little bit of an eye chart here, but we deployed a lot of services, a VPC, a standard configuration of that VPC, supporting services all around it, budgets, security services. And we actually timed this when we actually ran all these templates to test, and it takes about 16 minutes. Okay.
That's awesome.
Compared to hours?
Hours at least.
Yeah.
I know that for me, like we were saying, there's going to be that one typo, that one thing you do wrong. And so then you get irritated and you just grind on this one thing for 3 or 4 hours, end up taking a break, coming back, realizing, oh, wow,
it is right there.
There it is. There's a dumb mistake.
Yeah.
You do that 3 or 4 more times and then maybe you end up with something.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's really, the value of this service is that we've done that heavy lifting. To go back to that phrase again, we've worked through the typos, in the type definition, instead of 2 colons, we put 1 colon, right? AWS colon something instead of colon. We've worked through all of that on your behalf. And this is now you get the benefit of basically assembling these templates in different ways in order to build out solutions. So I know we talked a lot as we were going through this, but 16 minutes roughly, we jotted everything down as we built it out. So you can do this really, really quickly. And as I said, this is a small version of what we built. Okay.
That's incredible.
Didn't turn out the way I wanted. And if you didn't have Orbit Ops, okay, so let me actually back up. This is my latest attempt at, we're going to go back to the theme of macarons. This is my latest attempt at macarons, and they actually worked. Okay. They don't look really pretty. Too many little kind of dots on the top, right? Where a true macaron aficionado would say I'm wrong, but they worked. They worked. Versus without Orbit Ops, there's my an earlier attempt at macarons. I have no idea what I did. My wife had a good chuckle when she saw these. She's like, I don't know what these are, but there's no way we're eating them. So they all went into the bin. That was the end of this attempt. So yeah, you know what? You can definitely keep working at this without Orbit Ops, but we just kind of take away that heavy lifting and do that grunt work on your behalf, right?
Kind of like
get it done.
Kind of like the Blue Apron, the meal delivery service.
It's there you go. Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Here's everything. Turn on the stove.
Yeah.
Toss it a couple times.
I have a question about the Slack channel you mentioned earlier. So what does that typically look like for your customers?
Yeah. So I live in Slack. The rest of the team lives in Slack. So even if you're like, we're talking about a specific thing here, we have other offerings, like if a managed service customer or something like that, we all live in Slack together. and it gives us a really quick communication tool. For OrbitOps specifically, I mentioned that we have two offerings. We have kind of what we call the starter offering that provides community support. Okay, so that means that there's no guaranteed response time from us, like the folks that are creating the templates, but we put you in a Slack channel, and we're in that Slack channel all the time. So as an example, let's go back to our goof on the flow logs, right? You tried to deploy that and you did what I did. You put 45 days in there and you're like, hey, this didn't work. Well, we would be in that channel and we would look at it and say, okay, yeah, we understand what we've done wrong. We'll go fix it and we'll publish a new one for you. Okay. On the professional offering, there is a guaranteed response time. So you still exist in Slack. You can ask questions. Other customers can chime in, right? Because a lot of times people always do the same things. So you basically get access to that channel, but then you also get access to basically a ticketing system. So we all hang out in Slack and you can just ask questions in there. If there's templates that are missing that you feel should be here, then again, you could put those requests in Slack and we would take them away as roadmap options for later on. Okay.
And outside of, I was going to say, and outside of Slack, there's one other place that you sometimes live.
Oh yeah.
If people want to see more of you.
Yeah. So we hang out on Twitch every Tuesday. Actually, we do more than just Tuesdays, but what we call Tuesday is work night. So Tuesdays we do CloudFormation. We build out templates. To give you an example, a couple weeks ago now, in the past, let's say, Amazon released CloudWatch metric streams, which I'm really excited about. Allows us to essentially create a data lake in S3 of metric data, and then we can consume that with different tools, right? We built out that live on Twitch just to see how it work. So we do that every Tuesday night. And Taz, you were mentioning game servers. We do have a game server. I'm a bit of a Minecraft junkie. So Thursday nights we hang out and we play Minecraft and just take it easy. So that's our Twitch channel, Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah, so definitely everyone who's watching, the link is in chat. Go click there and give them a follow.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thanks, everybody. And Grizz asks a good question. Is there any free tier just for testing? Not at this point. We are kind of talking a little bit about it, like putting certain templates like the VPC template, like really foundational things like that, Grizz. But we just haven't kind of wrapped our heads around what exactly that looks like yet. But we're definitely considering it. The other thing, Taz also threw in Slack there, join, I think there's a YouTube link here somewhere too. We hang out in YouTube and we basically put all the content up on YouTube. We do walkthroughs from other services. And a lot of times we're having conversations with people through YouTube. We're providing some templates even through YouTube. So if somebody says, hey, I tried to do this config template. We just had a conversation the other day, didn't work. So a little bit of conversation on YouTube even going on. So we could even do something like that.
Got it.
How many mods in your Minecraft server?
Very important question.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's maybe my nephew or not. I'm joking. I know it's not him, but okay. So it sort of depends. Right now we're playing a vanilla hardcore Minecraft playthrough until we die. And that has, I think, 2 mods on it, which actually don't affect the game at all. Just basically helping us with the UI. The last time we did a playthrough, Kevin, I think, is still here, Kevin Evans, and he was watching with us. I think we had about 32 mods, jetpacks, all sorts of stuff. So it was a lot of fun, but not really Minecraft at that point. So right now, no mods. Okay. And I think, folks, I have one last slide. We talk a little bit about roadmap here. What are we kind of planning? Grizz, I'll definitely take away the free tier stuff because I think it's a really valid point. And like I said, we've been talking about it internally already. But one of the other things that we've already started thinking about are what we call solutions. So yes, you can assemble all these templates together yourself. But, if you wanted a GitLab implementation where all of our templates sit and you want it to look like how we're running GitLab, why not just assemble all the templates together for you? You can download that solution and run it as a completely integrated stack, right? Today we showed no integration between the templates. Like you got to go in and put parameter values. A solution is where we're going to use another intrinsic function. So we talked about exports. They become imports in other templates and we tie them all together. So I always get them messed up. I think they're called nested templates in CloudFormation. There's nested and chained, and I always get them mixed up. So basically we're tying a bunch of templates together. So that's going to be coming in the second half. The other thing to go along with those solutions is another repository, a repository of Amazon machine images. So things like, you know, a Linux machine that is set up particularly for, let's say, GitLab. As a subscriber, we would share those machine images privately with you. We manage them on your behalf in our account, and then you have access to those AMIs, and you could put them in your templates if they make sense. Because again, you know, a lot of things that we see customers do, you build a foundational image, right? It's got SSM installed on it. Let's say you're running Ubuntu, so you want to put SSM to help you manage it going forward. You want the CloudWatch Logs agent, the unified CloudWatch Logs agent on there. You could do that yourself, but we've got it all built already. So why not just, we'll share out that machine image with everybody. So those are a couple things that are coming in the second half that we're working on right now. So just give you an idea of where we think this is going, all subscription based still. Okay. So essentially what happens is you would give us the account IDs where you want to use the templates, and we would on our side share the AMIs with you privately, and they would pop up in your account for your use.
Very cool.
Yeah. And I think that's it, folks. So we'll go back to the nice macaron screenshot here that I'm still really proud of the second time when it worked. So
was that pistachio flavored?
No, that was the first color that I found in the cupboard. Okay. And drip. It was actually, they're just plain, and then I made a lemon filling for them. Ooh. So This is what I try to do to stop thinking about CloudFormation. I like to bake. So there you go.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Pistachio would be a good idea, though. Maybe I'll try that next time.
That's one of my two favorites are pistachio and rose. Actually, I love rose flavored things.
Yeah, that's a really tricky one, though. You messed that
so
up,
weird.
Right? You're eating soap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely a fine line, I think.
Yeah. Very careful with the rose with flavoring. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, Kevin, I see his chat. It was amazing. Mining lasers and jetpacks. Yeah, that was a fun Minecraft playthrough. That one.
What is rose flavored? It's exactly what it sounds like. It's
like the flower.
Like the flower.
Dessert.
Yeah. Yep.
It's very British, isn't it? I think it's quite popular there.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Rose water, right? They call it a lot of times if you're using it in baking and stuff. Even a poorly made macaron is still a macaron. Yeah. You know, okay, in fairness, you can see one missing. I'm like, I got to try this. And it was, I don't think you would like those, Grizz. It wasn't good.
It looks kind of like a crunchy cookie with maybe a soft center.
That's kind of what I thought, but they were more like glue. It was a very strange consistency. The chemistry did not work. So they went into the bin pretty quickly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I'll eat anything. And I was looking at those going, no, I don't think so. So
that's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's everything I got, folks. I don't know if there's any questions. Any last questions?
If anybody has any last minute questions, put them in chat before we go. Again, if you want to learn more, let me put those links in chat for everybody to access the Orbit Ops there, or if you're interested in the YouTube or Twitch channel, we've got that as well. So good YAML template is like a great cookie recipe.
I think so. I could go with that.
That's the takeaway.
Yeah, it's finely tuned and it works every time. There you go.
That's right.
There you go. Awesome. Well, thanks, man. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks, Chloe. Thanks, Taz. Had a lot of fun with this.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Absolutely. So that brings us to I think the most important part of the show, which is our sign off. And so we give people a couple of options here. We have happy trails, giddy up, or y'all come back now. So, Brett, which one do we want to sign off with?
Sorry, I was laughing as you were talking. What were my three choices?
Let's see here. What were they again? So there was giddy up.
Yeah.
Y'all come back now. And what was the first one? Now
I'm going giddy up.
Y'all come back now, giddy up. And then
okay. Wow,
giddy
now
up.
I can't even think about it. I'll have to go back and rewatch the stream, which everybody come back and rewatch the stream if you missed the first part. But you like giddy up?
Let's do giddy. I have no idea what I'm walking into. Let's do giddy up.
Okay, well, we're going to do our darn best to synchronize this on the count of three. And then we'll see you all next Wednesday. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, giddy up.
Giddy up.
See you all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.